wind howled across Colyton Hillhead, rustling the dry autumn leaves and carrying with it the whispers of the past. The hill, with its sweeping view of the Devonshire countryside, had always been a place of quiet reflection. But for those who knew the legend, it was also a place of quiet dread. For over a century, there had been tales of a ghostly figure seated upon a solitary stone at the hilltop. A man clad in an old-fashioned coat, puffing leisurely on a pipe, his gaze lost in the endless horizon. They said it was Dr Frederick Barnes, once a man of great distinction, chaplain to the House of Commons, sub-dean of Christ Church College, Oxford. Dr Barnes had adored this very spot in life. So much so, in fact, that he had arranged for a stone to be placed there, flat slab, rumoured to have once been a tombstone, dragged from its resting place to serve as his personal seat. But death had not taken his love for the view away, and so the doctor still remained. The stone on the hill, in the quiet village of Colyton, the story had been passed down through generations. Many had claimed to see him, a lone figure sitting at dusk, his pipe smoke curling against the twilight sky. He was always there, always watching, never speaking, and when approached, he simply vanished. Some called it a harmless haunting, a gentle spectre bound not by sorrow, but by love for the land. Others whispered that disturbing his seat would bring misfortune upon any foolish enough to try. No one had dared test the curse, until one summer evening, when a young historian named Edward Fallow arrived in Colyton with a mind to rationale for ghost stories and a curiosity too great for his own good. Edward had spent years studying English folklore, fascinated by the blurred line between myth and history. When he heard of Dr. Barnes and his haunted seat, he saw not a ghost story, but an unsolved mystery. What if the legend had a real explanation? And so, armed with a lantern and a notebook, Edward set off for Colyton Hillhead as the sun dipped below the horizon. The climb was steeper than he expected, the air crisp with the scent of earth and damp grass. When he reached the top, the stone was just as the stories described, a large, flat slab, weathered by time, sitting solitary against the open sky. Edward ran his hand over its rough surface. It certainly looked like a tombstone. Perhaps it was once part of a graveyard, he mused aloud, jotting down a note. Then he smelled it. Tobacco smoke. The scent drifted on the evening air, rich and unmistakable. Edward's breath hitched. He turned. There, just a few feet away, sat a man. His coat was old-fashioned, his hat tilted slightly forward, casting a shadow over his face. But the most unsettling detail was the pipe in his hand, its bowl glowing softly as he took a slow, deliberate puff. Edward's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary traveler. "Dr. Barnes?" he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure exhaled a stream of smoke and turned his head ever so slightly, acknowledging him, yet remaining silent. Edward took a step forward. The wind picked up. The air grew thick, as if charged with something unseen. The lantern in his hand flickered violently, then went out. And just like that, the figure was gone. The scent of tobacco lingered for only a moment longer before the wind carried it away. Edward stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had come looking for a legend. He had found something far more real. Back in the village, Edward recounted his experience to the locals at the inn. Some listened in silence, nodding knowingly. Others simply warned him, "Don't disturb the doctor's seat." But Edward, ever the skeptic, had other ideas. If the stone truly was a tombstone, then it belonged to someone. And if he could trace its origin, perhaps he could finally separate history from myth. Over the next few days, he searched old parish records, tracing the movements of gravestones and burial sites throughout Devon. What he found left him cold. The stone had indeed been taken from a burial ground, an unmarked grave of an unknown soul. Who it belonged to, no one knew. But one fact remained: Dr. Barnes had claimed it for himself. Edward returned to the hilltop that evening, troubled by the thought. Had the doctor's spirit remained, not simply out of love for the view, but out of guilt? Had he taken something that was never his to take? And if so, could he be laid to rest by returning the stone to its rightful place? Edward made his decision. He would move the stone. Armed with a shovel and sheer determination, Edward climbed the hill under the cover of darkness. He knew the task would be difficult, but he had convinced himself that this was the right thing to do. He set his lantern beside the stone and took a deep breath. Then he began to dig. The first strike of the shovel sent a chill through the night air. The second carried the scent of tobacco smoke. Edward paused, wiping sweat from his brow. The air around him felt heavier, charged with something unseen. He continued. Then the wind howled through the trees. A voice low, deep, and filled with quiet authority whispered, "Leave it be." Edward spun around, his breath hitching in his throat. Dr. Barnes stood before him, half shrouded in shadow, his pipe glowing in the dark. His expression was calm, but his eyes held an unmistakable warning. Edward stumbled backward, dropping his shovel. His body was gripped by an unnatural cold, his limbs stiff and trembling. The doctor exhaled a slow, deliberate puff of smoke, and in an instant, he was gone. The lantern's flame flickered back to life. The night was still. Edward did not move the stone. He never returned to Colyton Hillhead. To this day, the stone remains. Some say Dr. Barnes still sits there, enjoying the view, puffing at his pipe as he always did. Others claim he watches, waiting for anyone foolish enough to try and move what he wrongfully claimed in life. Few dare to visit after dark, and those who do always leave with the scent of tobacco lingering in the air. Many thanks for treading this tale's dark path. If its chill gripped you, like, follow, subscribe, and comment below.